Hello and welcome to another video. Today we're going to take our dialogue system and our NPCs and we're going to hook them up all together so that we give it some game juice and make it so we've got sound effects, blinking, mouth moving, typing out letters, the works. So stay tuned. Hi, my name is Michael. Welcome to my 2D action and adventure RPG tutorial series. Follow along and learn how to create your own ARPG in Godot 4 using GD script. Okay, so today here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this scene that we've developed and we've built this functionality. Let's go ahead and demo it real quick, where we can interact with and speak with one of these NPCs. Or throw a boomerang at him, because apparently I can't remember the key bindings. Okay, so what we've got is we've got a nice looking dialogue system, right? And it's able to go and iterate through the dialogue items that we're passing in. But the thing that's missing, of course, is the game juice. This is something that I've mentioned in the past, but I've never been very explicit when we're adding it. And obviously, we don't need to do anything more with this dialogue system for it to be functional, you know, as far as just getting through a series of dialogue items. But what we do want to do is make it a little bit more interesting and interactive and exciting to use. Okay, so that's what game juice is. It's sound effects, it's visual effects, it's, you know, different things that add and enhance the kind of the feel, the ambiance that our game can provide. And in order to do so, we're going to go to our dialogue system and we're going to update this. And we're going to do just a couple steps here. So a few things that we can do. We have, if you recall, our portraits. Our portrait sprites have multiple frames. So this one that I've designed has blinking and open mouth frames. Okay, so we're going to utilize those. And we've also, if I go to my file system and look at the audio, we've also got the voice blip. Okay. And I think voice blip is the one that's actually in the zip file on my itch.io page. Okay, so if you're following along and you haven't grabbed that, or you need to grab it, or need to bring files over, we're going to be utilizing this voice blip today. Voice blip is there. So in fact, let me just delete text blip. I'm going to go ahead and remove this because I don't want it. Voice blip actually contains the same audio that was in text blip, but I did some more editing to it to just, I don't know, make it sound better, I thought. Okay, so we're going to use that. We're going to put that audio in there and we're going to make it so that the text types out, so that it's not just like, wham, here's the text, but we'll make it kind of type each letter out in a sequence. And by doing those things, we're going to really enhance the feel that the dialogue system has. All right. We already have all of the components that we need to make this happen. We've got some things that we added in previous videos, like this timer. We've obviously got the portrait sprite, which is generally set up. And everything else that we need is here. We just need to manipulate it and do some things with it. And we will do that in our dialogue system script. So I'm going to go ahead and open that. Just scroll to the top here. Okay, so if you remember, we've got our dialogue system node. It extends a canvas layer, and we've got these things that we set up. Okay, so hopefully you're at that point. If not, you can go back to previous videos and make sure you've got all this stuff working, and then you'll be ready to dive into this one. Alternatively, if you have a dialogue system and you want to try and do some similar implementation with yours, then you may be able to start just fine here. You're just going to have to retrofit the code to match your project if it's different. All right, so in this file, let's add a few additional variables that we're going to need to be able to make this work. I want to add a new signal, and we'll call this signal letter added. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to, this is going to not only emit a signal, but the signal is going to contain what that letter was. So it has an argument here, which is letter of type string. And as a side note, I did some research about this. When you static type your variables by assigning the type like this, I mean, we could just do letter and pass anything we want, and it could be a number. But when we static type them, there are actually performance improvements. And depending on the type of functionality you're doing, I've learned it could be anywhere from an 8% to like 20% speed improvement. And that might not matter if you're making a small game, but it could add up over time. And especially if you write inefficient code, which I don't claim to write ultra efficient code always. So, I mean, I'm not an expert at efficient code. So I'll take any savings I can get on the performance. So that's just a side note about this. We've got a couple things that we need to add here as well. So not only do we want to know when the dialogue is active, but we want to know when when text is in progress. So I'll just call this variable text in progress, meaning I like, is the text typing out on the screen, right? And by default, we can set that to false. I also want to have a few other variables that we can use to control the text and the speed of the text. So one of them is called text speed. Okay. And I'll put this to 0.02. So this is going to be, I mean, that's a really small time, but we'll play around with this and you'll see what the effect is. I also want a variable called text length. And this is of type integer, and that should be equal to 0 for now, or obviously without a decimal. And I didn't put a type on this. This should be a float. Our text speed. And then we want one called plain text. And we can just leave this empty for now. This variable will come into play later on, because if you recall, we've enabled the bbcode in our rich text label. And so if we have these things in here like the bold or the wave, when we're counting how many characters there are in this text and trying to determine if it's completed and things like that, these bbcode tags throw it off because they aren't displayed, but they are part of the string. And there's kind of some inner workings with how the bbcode text works on these text labels that honestly can be a little bit confusing, and it still is to me at times. It's one of those things where I was having issues with this and I couldn't get timing to line up with like mouth and audio, and I was confused, and I realized that I had to keep the stripped version of the text without any bbcode and use that for some of my calculations and things like that. So that's what we're going to use plain text for. Okay, I hope that made sense. And then we've got dialog items, our dialog item index. Let's look at the onReady variables we've got. We've already grabbed our dialog UI and the content, the name label, the portrait sprite. We don't have our timer in here, so let's grab that. Just going to click and drag while holding control. Do we have an audio player? Yeah, we do. There's our, I don't think we brought that in yet. So let's get our audio stream player. And 8 things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, that's everything I've got in my notes. Okay. So once we get these variables set up, or these variables, we're going to need these to work with, to be able to make this happen. All right. And then let's do just maybe one other quick setup or two. Let's look at our timer. I want to make sure this is configured. So we want our timer. We're going to set the wait time in code, so you can leave that. I want to turn on one shot. We can look at the description. So if you don't have this on, then when the timer runs to 0, it starts back over. So if you leaving this off, the default is if you want something to just, if you want the timer to trigger every second, then you could turn that off. We want to turn this on so that it stops. And if I recall, the finished signal that we want to connect to won't fire if we don't have it on one shot, right? If it's repeating, then it's never finished. So I'm pretty sure that's why we turned that off. I don't know, I might be forgetting, but and then lastly, let's just make sure we've got our audio stream player configured. So let's set the voice blip audio in there. And I want to set this to play through the sound effect bus. You might alternatively in your project have an additional audio bus for UI audio. And sometimes I do that. I don't know that it's ultra necessary, but just to show you down here in the audio, you can see I've got a few different buses set up. And I have muted the music bus while I'm working because I don't always want to hear the music while I'm working. But I do want to hear the sound effects most of the time, so I don't mute that. And so by selecting that bus here on the audio stream player, that means anytime it plays audio, goes through sound effect. And then if we were to set the volume differently, which I have also done that here, then obviously these will pick up those settings and anything else that you've done to your buses. Okay. And then I guess one last thing is let's set our max polyphony to something like 6. Okay. And again, this is just, you can see this tooltip here as I hover it, but the max polyphony is the maximum number of sounds that a node can play at the same time. So if you had this set to the default of 1, then as soon as you played a second sound, it would like cut off the first sound and begin playing the second sound. And sometimes that's desirable and sometimes that's not. And in my experience with this building, this component, I think putting the polyphony higher so we get a little bit of overlap of the sound effect is a little bit more pleasant. Okay, so you can experiment with that. And you don't want to set this too high necessarily. I think audio can eat up memory, I think, sometimes. So keep this low. 6 might even be too high, but whatever, you can experiment. Okay, so there we go. I think we've done. We've set up variables and we've set up some things in our dialog system node. Okay, so the first effect I want to work on is that of the typing or displaying the text as the, you know, to kind of simulate the character talking. And I want to just review one of the features that's built in that we're going to be able to use to accomplish this quite easily, actually. And you can see if I select my rich text label and go to the inspector, down under displayed text, there is a visible characters value. And let's just set this to 2. And you can see what that did is it only shows 2 characters. Okay. And as we increase this, it will increase and decrease. So, and obviously -1 is just for displaying all, is how that's interpreted, right? So what we can do is manipulate that value over time to get our text type out effect. Okay, so let's go back over to our script. We're going to want to go down to our start dialog right here. We've got 2 functions that are somewhat confusingly named, maybe. Show dialog shows the UI. Start dialog actually begins by selecting which piece of dialogue we need to start and displaying it in the box. Okay, so 2 different things. So we want to look at the start dialog method. And we're going to add some code to this. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab our content, okay, which is the reference to our rich text label, right? Content. It's referencing that. And we will start, every time we start a new dialog item, we will set the visible characters equal to 0. Okay, so that means it's not going to be displaying anything. And then we need to calculate the text lengths that we have. If you recall, we just set up those variables, right? We've got text length, plain text. Okay, so text length equals content dot, and then there's a method we can use on this label that is called get total character count. Okay, and then likewise we want to take our plain text and we want to set that equal to the content. And there's another function we're going to use. It's called get parsed text. Okay, well, let's go ahead and look at these real quick. So get total character count, and by the way, that's just holding control and then left clicking. Okay, so then that pulls you to the documentation. In this case, for the rich text label, it would take you, if you're working on Node 2D, we get an explanation of what these functions do. Get total character count's pretty straightforward. Returns a total number of characters from text tags. Does not include BB codes, right? Remember how I was mentioning that earlier? And then when we look at, let me go ahead and close these 2 scripts. When we look at the dialog system and we go to get parsed text, this returns the text without BB code markup. Right? Normally we could just access the content text by saying content.text. But the content.text, when we look at it in code, it includes the BB codes. When it's displayed on screen, the text label is smart enough to strip out and apply the BB codes. Okay, so that's why we want this plain text here, so that we have a variable in our code that matches what the player sees. Okay, and then the next thing we need to do is let's set our text in progress variable to true. So we know, oh, okay, we're typing out our text equals true, not minus true. And then we're going to want to start our timer. And we'll make a function for this, okay? So we'll call a function that we're going to call start timer. And I want to do this as a function. It's nice to break code into functional pieces that do a very specific thing. More often than not, if you don't do that, later on, you're going to find that, oh, I want to do the same thing. You know, here we might want to start the timer in another function. And if you call it twice and you just copy and paste like multiple lines of code like we're going to have here, then that gets kind of stupid. It's just a waste. So let's just go down here and make this new start timer. And in addition, it's just a good habit to get into because you develop good habits doing it this way. And it really helps you think about the code that you're writing and what it needs to do when you break it down into small pieces like this. Start timer is going to be a few lines though. So the first thing that we're going to do is we want to grab our timer and then we're going to set the wait time. So timer.wait time. Okay, that was that value I showed you in the inspector. We're going to set this equal to the text speed. And then the reason why we're going to do this here in this function, and that we don't want to just set it to a fixed speed in the inspector, is because we're going to do some things where we manipulate the text speed. And for now, I'm not going to do that. Okay, we'll do some things here. We will we'll manipulate the text speed, or wait time, maybe I should say. But we're not going to do that right now. Okay, so we'll just set the timer, and then we'll say timer.start. Bloop. Okay. And what's going to happen here is when we run this and we talk to this guy, why do I keep hitting the boomerang button? I might need to change my key bindings. So now he says nothing, right? And we can hit next. Not quite what we want, but you can see that we've managed to not display all the text at first. We got to make two things happen. We got to make it so that it starts waiting for that timer. So every time this timer times out, we want to add another letter. That's why it's such a small interval, 0.02 seconds or whatever. So let's do that right now. And what we're going to want is we're going to want a function, and we'll call it on timer. Let's see, on timer timeout, I think it would be good. Someone asked why I put underscores, and I've probably answered this. Generally, you put an underscore if it's like a private variable or function or variable, meaning it's only called within this class. That's generally why I put that there, just to indicate that. And I do that oftentimes for functions that are connected to signals. It helps me remember, like, I'm only calling this function in a specific place, in this case from a signal. So what we're going to do is on timer timeout, we're going to get our content.visible characters, and we're going to say plus equals 1. And that would be good, but eventually it's going to get an error. Let's oops. I just changed that to plus equals 16. I meant to hit F5 and I tapped the 6. Okay, so if I can remember how to talk to him. Oh my gosh, you guys, it's kind of embarrassing. Oh, oops. Nothing happened. One more step. We actually need to connect this to the timer. So we'll go ahead and do this on our ready function here. Right before we do this, right before we do the hide dialog in a ready function, we're going to go timer.timeout. Timeout.connect. And then we'll just put this function in there on timer timeout. Okay, good. So that means timer is going to start, and then every time it times out, it's going to call that method. So now if we run it, we should get something resembling what we want. Uh-oh. Whoa, hey, I saw a letter pop up. That's interesting. Okay, let's double check our code. Let's make sure I'm not missing. I must have missed something critical, right? Text speed, timer, one shot is on. Show dialog, start dialog, start timer, timer.start. Let's do this. Let's put a breakpoint on this and let's run the project. And then let's go talk to our dude. We'll see what happens. Okay. Seems like we're never hitting that. You add a breakpoint just by clicking here in the left column of the code editor. You see when I hover over a line of text, you get that little red dot. What this will do is it should stop the game, and as soon as we call this function or get to a certain line and notify us that we reached it. So maybe I'm too close to the project right now and I'm blind. No, we did call start timer and start dialog. And do we ever call start dialog? Yeah, we do. Start dialog. Right here. I know I'm missing something obvious. I just can't think what it is. Do my stupid boomerang. Ah, okay. Breakpoint hit this. Start timer. That's interesting. So what we can do is we can say like step into, or we can say continue F12, and then I'll go back to running the code. So for whatever reason, when we called start timer, that didn't hit this breakpoint. I'm really not sure why. Let's put the breakpoint on timer.start. I hope some of you aren't at home screaming at the camera, like, or at the screen. Okay, it hit that. Stop. Stop. Okay, let's just double check. I'm just going to go ahead and print this here. I sometimes like doing print because I don't want it to stop. I just want to be able to see if something comes out. And this is probably considered bad practice by some people, but I don't know. It's just what I like to do. And sometimes I'll just put the name of the function, you know. Okay, let's go ahead and run this one more time. Really interesting. It happened once. So there must be, I must be, well, yeah. Obvious. Oh my gosh. I was holding off on the next bits of the on timer timeout because I wanted to just demonstrate it, but you guys probably saw it. We need to start the timer again. I mean, simple as that. So let's just, I want to cut that out, but I'm going to leave it in so you guys know I'm human too. Start timer. Let's run it. Besides, it's like an extra probably 50 minutes of debugging that I can get YouTube ads on. Okay, so if I talk to him, there we go. It typed out. That's excellent. Excellent. Wow, that actually worked a little better than I thought. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to our code. The only other thing that we want to do is we want to disable and enable that, I don't know, that label that says next or end, okay? And so what we'll do is when we call start dialog in our start dialog function, we're setting that indicator to true. We're actually going to set this to false. Okay. And then what that means is we're not going to show that little indicator here. Okay. This little guy that says next. And then once we know that we've displayed all the text, then we'll set it to true. And so that will be a simple check. So we're going to go down to back to our on timer timeout function. And we're going to do a check here. So what we need to do is we need to say if content dot visible characters is less than or equal to text length. Okay. Then we'll start the timer. Else, if it's not, that means we're done. We don't have any more text to display. We will do we'll call our show indicator, show dialog button indicator method, and we'll set it to true. And then we can also set our text in progress equal to false. And now if we run it and go talk and not throw a boomerang, you can see how the next indicator won't display until the text has finished. Now, one thing I can do is I can just press and keep going next. And I don't mind that behavior, actually. If you wanted to prevent the person playing the game from being able to advance the text until it all types out, you could add a check in here. And we would do that. Let's see, in our unhandled input. You'll see right here where we're just incrementing it if they push a button. What we could do is we could say if text in progress equals true, then we could return and not do the key press. Okay. And in fact, we could move that up, but anyways, I'll put it there for a second and I'll just show you that should prevent me from being able to advance the dialogue prematurely. Yeah, I had to wait. Okay, so that's going to be a judgment call that you guys can make. If the player presses a button there's no situation when we would want them to just skip the text. I mean, right, the desired behavior would be you press the button, you just want to skip the typing out of the text, but you still want to see it so you can read it maybe, or at least have the chance, and then if you push the button again, it moves forward. So what we could do is we could say, if text is in progress equals true, before we return, maybe we do something like kind of what we're doing down here. Right? Instead of setting our visible character to plus equals 1, we could set it to the text length. So let's try that real quick. So content.visible characters equals text length. And then in that situation, right, a couple other things that we need to do. We probably need to get our timer and stop it so that it doesn't fire again. And we would need to set our text in progress to false, and we would need to update our indicator. So we would say show, oh my gosh, show dialog button indicator equals true, not equals. I'm so stupid sometimes. Okay, so there we go. I don't know if this is going to work exactly how I want, but let's give it a shot. I can do this without throwing the boomerang. Okay. Hi, hero, is that you? And then, yeah, there we go. I'm just hitting the button real quick and it skips right to the end. That works kind of how I want it to. So there we go. Little bonus. I'm noticing that my NPC is kind of flipping the other direction there. So that's lovely. I've got a bug later. I'm not going to try and solve that now because that's really going to detour me. But there we go. So now we've updated this so that the player can kind of skip forward in the text if they want to read it without waiting. And that's kind of a nice little feature, pretty easy to add. So next, let's make it so that we start using this sound effect here. And we can go ahead and start, I guess, down in whenever our timer times out, okay? So this is, I'm going to do something here that we're going to remove, but just as an example, this is what we could do. We could take our audio stream player and just say play every time we put a new piece of text in there. So let's run that. And I mean, that's not terrible, but it sounds kind of really rapid, right? And so what I want to do is I want to marry the functionality of playing the audio with the portrait and making the mouth move on the portrait, okay? And so there are probably a few ways we could do this, but I devised a way that I wanted to do it. And in order to do so, what we're going to do is we're going to add a script to the portrait sprite, because it makes sense to have a script on the portrait to control the portrait itself. We could do it from the dialog system, and there's really not much wrong with that either. But let me go ahead and just build this out, because the portrait itself is going to have enough variables that, I mean, it would add a significant amount of code to our dialog system. So it feels good to me to break it out that way, and it'll make the files a little bit easier to understand and follow through. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to our file system, go down to our scripts, and we'll create a new script in here that we can call dialog portrait, I suppose. And let's put that on the portrait sprite and open that up. Okay. We want this script. I kind of want this script to be a tool so that it happens in editor, but I don't know why. Okay, let's just go ahead and do this. Let's go class name. Man, I want to put equals is dialog portrait. And then it'll extend to sprite 2D, because that's the kind of node we've got it on. And we want to grab those sprite things. So I'm going to add a few variables here. We want a variable that's called blink, and this will be a Boolean, and it equals false. And we're going to put a setter on this. So colon set equals set blink. Okay, so we're going to have to create that function. And this is going to have a value of bool, returns void. Okay. For now, we just need to say, I want to do that here. We need to just say blink equals value. Okay, so right now the setter is pointless, but obviously we're going to do more with it later. We'll have another variable called open mouth, also Boolean, also equal to false, also with a setter. And we'll call this one set open mouth. Okay. So another function here. And I'm going to copy this point, and except that should be open mouth. Okay. And then we're going to have a variable that I'm going to call mouth open frames. And there's probably a better way to do this. I hate saying that because you guys think I'm stupid maybe, but I was just playing around and I came up with this way because I didn't want the mouth to move too fast. And this seemed to work. So we use this mouth open frames integer to help with that. We need, in this script though, we also need to grab, I think we just want to grab this audio stream player in here because it'll be easier to play the audio from this script so that the animation and the audio are synced in the script and it all happens in one place. That's my reason for doing it here. Take it or leave it. So I'm going to go ahead, and we do need a non-ready function as well, or just a ready. See, I do TypeScript development during the day, and the equivalent of this in one of my applications, there would be on ready. So I always get those confused. If engine.isEditor hint, then we will return, because I do want to make this a tool script, and I don't even know if it's important to, but here we go. Make it a tool script. Okay. And then what we want to do is, if you recall, in our dialog system, we added a new signal that's called letter added. Okay. So let's go to our dialog portrait. We want to connect to that. So we should be able to say DialogSystem .letteradded.connect. And then we just give it a method. And I'm going to call this method check mouth open. Except that's not how you spell mouth. Oh my gosh. Okay, check mouth open. And I'm going to go ahead and create this function right here. And if you recall, let's go back to our dialog system. This emits the letter, and it's a string. Okay, so I'm going to come back here, and I'm just going to paste that. I'm going to shorten this to L. And so every time we get a letter change from the dialog UI, we can react to it in this script now. We can update the portrait if we want to. We can play sound if we want to. And so what we could do, right, is over here, let's see, did I already remove the playing the sound effect? There it is. I did. I'm going to remove this. And instead of playing the sound effect in our on time or timeout here, what we need to do is we need to emit the letter added signal. And what we need to get the letter, and this is another place, actually this is maybe the first place where we use that plain text, excuse me, the plain text variable, because remember the plain text doesn't have the bbcode. So we're going to grab our plain text, and it's like an array, even though it's not. You can treat it like one, and we can grab a character at a location. And so what we'll do is we'll say content.visibleCharacters -1. So what we're going to do is grab the letter at the location that we're typing and pass that or emit that in our letter added, except I did that wrong. It's not letter added, it's letter added.emit. Okay. So we emit the letter right here, and we may run into an error here because I did something different, but I don't think so. I think it should still be a valid character. I mean, there's a possibility you could put an index in here that's, greater than the number of characters and you'd get an error. I don't think we will though. I think our code's good. Okay, so that means that this letter emitted thing is now going to fire, and we're connected to it here. And so what we can do for now is let's just say print, and then we'll just print the letter L, that variable. And let's go ahead and run it. We should see when we start talking, please don't throw a boomerang. Please don't throw a boomerang. Okay, there we go. So you can see here we've got the letters outputted to the console. Okay. So that's good. That means this script is working so far. Okay, but that's not what we want to do. Instead, we could do something like we could play the audio. Remember, we have the audio stream player play, right? So let's go ahead and run that. And it should have the same effect that we had earlier, but just to show. There we go. Okay, good deal. But we want to take this a little step further. We want to, what I want to do is I want to play the audio only when the mouth is open, which we don't have yet. And I want to give it a random pitch, okay? So that's not going to be that difficult, but you're probably wondering, how are we going to detect if the mouth is open? I devised this solution where we could check if it's a vowel. And if it's a vowel, we could open the mouth. And then it needs to stay open for a couple frames, maybe, so that you can actually see it, right? So let's do this. Okay, we're going to say if, now this is going to look really weird, and I'm just going to paste this in here. And I decided to put numbers in this. So this string contains vowels, it contains a Y, and it contains numbers. And these are the characters that I want to check, or that I want to be able to trigger an open mouth. Not the whole thing combined, but any one of these, right? So if this string contains the letter that we're passing in here, this is kind of backwards, right? This is like saying, is the letter inside here, is the letter one of these? Okay. So if it is, then what we do is we set our open mouth to true. Okay. And then we need to go mouth underscore open frames. And I'm going to say plus equals, I'm going to go for 4. We'll see if this works. Okay. I might need to reduce that, and maybe this thing needs to be refactored. Another thing I want to do is another check is if I just want to check if it's like a period, a comma, exclamation mark, or question mark. Those are probably the common things that would end a sentence right here. So if that string contains our letter, meaning our letter is one of those characters, then I'm going to set the mouth open frames equal to 0, maybe. I don't know. Okay, first thing we've done is we've detected if the mouth is open, and if we are, we've set some variables and done nothing else with them, right? So at the end of this function, I want to check one other thing. So if mouth open frames is equal to 0, then we can say the open mouth is false. Okay. And remember, open mouth is going to be calling this setter function. So some of the magic is going to happen there. We'll get there in just a moment. The last thing I want to do is, let's see, is we need to, what we're doing right now is we've got a number of frames that we're keeping the mouth open. So we need to kind of decrease that and eventually maybe close the mouth. So like if open mouth or mouth open frames, right, is greater than 0, then we need to subtract it. Mouth open frames minus equals 1. So what this does is we're going to set every time there's like a vowel or something, we're going to give it like, okay, for 4 frames, keep your mouth open. And this isn't tied to frames per second. This is tied to letters. So frames is maybe misleading, but bear with me. And then constantly, every time that a new letter comes in, we're going to decrease it. And if it happens to be a period, we're going to set it to 0. Eventually it should hit 0. And in fact, this probably needs to be smaller. I'm going to put it to 3. We'll see how the effect looks. Okay, and then we're playing the audio stream right here. Let's go ahead and cut this out, and let's put it here when a vowel happens. So maybe we don't do it on consonants, right? Alternatively, you could put like another else or something and play it only on consonants if you wanted to. And there we go. We've got a weird little function here, right? So I want to hook up I want to hook up this set open mouth so that the mouth actually starts opening. And in order to do so, we're going to need one more function here, okay? And this function is going to be called update portrait. It's going to be used by both setting the mouth frame as well as setting the blink, okay? Because both are going to be able to change what the portrait looks like. So we're going to do this. We're going to say if open mouth equals true, then we're going to say frame, because remember, this is a sprite. We're extending a sprite 2D, so it's got a frame property. We can just simply say frame equals 2, else frame equals 0. And so what that looks like, let's look at the sprite here. Here's frame 0, here's frame 2. 0, 1, 2, 3. That's how they go, right? Because they start with 0. So if open mouth is true, whenever update portrait is called, it's going to set the mouth. Okay. I think this should be enough to get a little bit going here. So let's go ahead and run this and hope not to throw a boomerang at this guy. Oh, it's kind of working, except his mouth is not opening. Okay. So let me see, what did we miss here? We have open mouth equals true. Oh, it's because set open mouth down here, right? We need to call the update portrait. And actually, I'm going to do this. So I'm going to do an if, because there's going to be times where we're going to continue, like open mouth could be true and it could be set to true again. We don't need to update the portrait. We don't need to change it. So if open mouth does not equal this value that we're passing in, right? Then we'll do this, and we will also call update portrait. There we go. So that's our complete set open mouth. Quite simple. Now if we run it, it should work. Hey, check it out. Mouths are opening, okay? And you'll notice that the sound effect is a little bit more natural. It's a little more organic because it's not playing with every single letter. So that was my solution to getting that to sound a little bit better. I mean, you could do something else, but I kind of like that, and I'm pretty happy with it. There's only one other thing I want to do with the audio, and that's that before we play the audio, I want to give it one little bit extra bit of organicness, a little bit more game juice, right? Each little thing we're doing adds to that game juice. I'm going to grab the audio stream player, and I want to set the pitch just a little bit. And what we'll do is we'll say pitch scale equals, and then we're going to create a random number. So we'll do a random F range. And you don't want this to be too big because a minor pitch change is noticeable. Okay. So you can say like the minimum would be like 0.96 and the maximum could be like 1.04. If you'll notice I went by 0.04. That's kind of the delta of that change, right? So we're going to do this. We're going to grab a random pitch between that and that, okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and run this again. And let's go talk to the guy. Cool. Just a minor little fluctuation. I mean, we could really crank this up. Let's do that for fun. Let's just put this like to 0.8 and 1.2. So you can hear what that sounds like. And I need to stop and play again. Actually, I think I could have just, you know what? I think the hot reloading with that would work just fine. Let's talk to him. Like that's kind of crazy, right? We could set, so I'll set this back to 1.04, 1.96. Save that. I saved that and I kept it running. Let's see if this works. Yeah, that's something I haven't done with you guys a whole lot. That's one reason why I love Godot. Okay, so to me, that small pitch shift sounds pretty good, okay? And so now we've got a portrait whose mouth moves, plays the audio with it, and it's already pretty awesome. But we'll take it a few more steps before we wrap this up. Now, one more thing we're going to do with the portrait, obviously, is we want to utilize these blinking frames, okay? That's just going to give a little bit extra life to the character. And you could really do a lot more with the animations of these portraits if you wanted to, but I'm just going to be honest, from a practical standpoint, as a solo individual making these things, I don't want to be doing more than those 4 frames for these portraits. You know, I'm imagining like I could have maybe a dozen or more portraits, and that could be a lot of work. I mean, if you're hiring it out, or if you've got some other way to generate them fast, like if you're using AI, which is both amazing and loathsome at the same time, in my opinion, you know, maybe you want to do more. So you could do more with the animations. You could even do different mouth shapes with different vowels using this method I've shown you, right? You could come in here and you could just limit this if statement to only include the vowels that you want to have, like an O shape, or the AE could maybe share shape, or they could each have their own shape. You do you, right? You could even do that with other letters, like, you know, K and C maybe look different, or P or an M. Okay, that's taking it really far, but totally doable. And you could just build it. It would just make the script a little bit bigger. But the thing that we can do, like I said, is we can do the blinks. So I want to just come down here. Right now we're not doing anything with blink. We don't even have a way to set it. And so in fact, I'm going to do this. We want to make one more function. I'm going to do it right down here. And we'll just call it, I'm going to call it blinker, which is really weird, but whatever. That's what the function is. It's the blinking function. So we'll say if blink equals false here. So if they're currently not blinking, then I want to just have a timeout. We could use a timer, but you know me, a lot of times I'd like to just use the get tree create timer functionality, which is what we'll do here. We'll create a timer, and then we need to randomize the blinking. So this is going to be a random f range, and we're going to go from 0.1 seconds to about 3 seconds. Okay, and you know your mileage may vary. You can tweak these numbers. I don't really like exporting them and making an export variable, because once I feel good about it, I'm not going to come back and tweak it, but you could. Okay, so we're going to set a timer, and then if they are blinking, we'll also set a timer. It's just I want a different time, right? So not if, and we want an else here. So if they're blinking, or if they're not blinking, excuse me, if blink equals false means eyes are open, that's the timeout. If not, if their eyes are closed, then it'll be another await. So we can copy this, paste it, except this one we don't need to do a random number. You could, but I don't think it's necessary. We'll just do it 0.15, so just a short interval that the eyes will stay closed. And then what this blinker function will do, anytime we call it, is it's essentially just going to wait, and then it's going to toggle the blink. So blink will equal not blink. That just means the opposite of for Boolean. I think we could actually in Godot also say not blink. Yeah. And then, oddly enough, we're just going to call this function right back. Okay, we're just going to call blinker right there. Kind of weird, right? This is just going to be a function that continues to call itself. If you didn't have an await on here, this would never stop. This would be really bad. But because it's asynchronous, we can do this. And some people still might scoff at me. Man, I don't know. Alternatively, you could have this set to a timer like we did with the mouth, and I don't know, or with the letters. Okay, one thing we do need to do though is in our onReady, we need to call blinker because it needs to be called somewhere before it ever starts working. So we'll do that in the ready. And last but not least is we need to update our update portrait and our set blink down here to handle these. So we can copy this kind of concept down here where if blink, we only want to do this if blink, oh my gosh, does not equal the value, right? Then we'll set it and we will call update portrait. And so in update portrait, the way these sprites are laid out is very intentional. Mouth closed with eyes open and closed, and mouth open with eyes open and closed. And you'll notice we're setting the frame here, and this is fine. We don't need to change that. And then what we can simply do is you'll notice that if the mouth is closed, then the frame is 0. That means it's here. We could just add 1 to get the blink. If the mouth is open and it's blinking, we can add 1. So in both cases, we could simply add 1. So that means we can go if blink equals true, then we'll say frame plus equals 1. There we go. Easy as that. So I think we accounted for all the code we need for the blink. So let's run it. And what's nice is the portrait will keep blinking even when we're done talking, as long as we don't throw a boomerang at him. Cool. There you go, hero, blink for us. Turd. Okay, cool. So there we go. We've added just a little bit more juice, a little bit more game juice. Feels a little bit more alive and interesting. And, you know, you really don't have to do a whole lot. And you can get a lot out of this. Okay, so there's actually one more thing I do want to do, though, that I kind of forgot, but we're going to do it now. And that's that not only do I want the audio pitch to be able to shift, but I want it to be able to be unique per NPC. And we can do that pretty simply. It's just going to require some modifications to our NPC resource. So I'm going to go down here to the file system. Oops, I don't want to close it. I want to go to it. And then I'm going to go to my NPC scripts. And then so if I can find the resource, let's open that up. So you remember we have this dialog audio pitch. If you're following along, we set this up and we set it to a string and we didn't ever do anything with it. Now, here's what we'll do. For now, I'm going to just set this to a float. Okay. And I'm going to set it equal to 1.0. Okay, so that's going to be like the basic normal pitch. And that's what we're currently hearing with a slight variation is just a pitch at 1. And I'm going to go ahead and just save that. And then if I come in here, there we go. You can see his audio pitch is 1. That's fine. Let's go to NPC 1. And I'm going to set his pitch to 0.5. So that's like half. That might be a little bit too low, but it'll be obvious. Okay. So let's go ahead and save that. Now we need to be able to get this pitch into our dialog here, into our portrait. And so this is what we'll do. Let's put a variable in here. And we'll call this variable audio pitch mod. We're going to modify the audio pitch, and it's a float, and it equals 0. Hold on. Let's not call it mod. Let's call it audio pitch base. That makes more sense. And we'll set it equal to 1.0. And then we'll just update this with whatever's in the character. And then we need to go down to our code. And instead of picking this range, we're going to go with audio pitch base minus 0.04. Okay. And then we'll copy that and replace this with audio pitch base plus 0.04. So now we're doing the same thing, but we're doing it based off of a dynamic variable. And we need to set that variable. So let's go to our dialog system. And we need to go up to our variables that we grab up here. We have a reference to our portrait sprite. The problem is we've cast it as a sprite 2D, but it's now a dialog portrait. So let's change that to dialog portrait. And now if we go down to where we call portrait sprite, and I'm just going to do a copy find so I can find it. Okay, so down here we set dialog data and we set the sprite. We also need to now set the that base, that audio base. So the what did we call it? Audio pitch base is going to be equal to the d.npcinfo dot and then dialog audio pitch. Save that. And then let's just look at our scene here. So we've got the NPC that we've been talking to. And this NPC, you can see he has this resource applied. So he's going to have that audio pitch. So if we're lucky, the last bit of magic will work without any bugs. And I'm going to throw a boomerang at him for old time's sake. Uh-oh. It worked for him, but we're getting a bug. So we're not so lucky. It might be because I threw a boomerang at him. Okay, here we go. Dialog portrait, check open mouth condition. Oh. Less than or equal to 0.0 is true. So I guess it seems like we might be setting a value that we can't. I think they don't want the pitch scale to be less than 0, but I don't see how this could do that. Unless, let's look at our hero. His dialog audio pitch is 1. NPC 2, his is 1. How did I set this up? 1.0. I gotta debug this with you guys. So I guess you're lucky. I don't know. DialogSystem. In here, let's do this. Let's print this value that we're going to pass in, and I'll just say this is the audio pitch. And then you can just put a comma after the print, paste that variable. Let's see what pitch we're passing in. I don't know. Oh, it worked for a second. Interesting. We are passing in a 0. I don't know why. Alternatively, you know, before we did that, let's go ahead and do this for fun. Since we're doing a little bit more advanced stuff, let's just put a breakpoint right here. And if we run it, when we get there, now we can look at here. I feel like there's a way we should be able to see what those values are in here. For the life of me, I'm not remembering how, I guess. Variables, here's our D. Oh, here we go. I can click on that. This is actually useful. There we go. So if I look at this, if I select these objects in the inspector, I can see what the values are. And I can see that it's got this NPC info. It's 0.5. I don't know. Let's resume. Okay, now we're doing it again. This time it's the hero. And let's look at the NPC info. Dialog audio pitch is 1. But then for whatever reason, when we pass it in, it's coming in as a 0. How absolutely lame. I'm not really sure what's causing this. I think there's a possibility that we're actually calling this with before something's like instantiated or something. Let me just run this. This is funny because I did this a slightly different way than previously, and now it's giving me all sorts of errors. Oh, whoa, it worked. What did I change? Cool, well, you heard how they switched audio pitches. I'm guessing that something was wrong with my resource. Maybe when I saved the changes to the resource, or I hadn't saved the changes to the resource, and so it was like an empty string or something. That's my best guess at this point, because I don't see anything in code that doesn't look right. So let's just try talking to him one more time. There we go. Well, there you have it, folks. If you have that problem, let's just go back and look at this. I'm pretty sure, like I said, I'm pretty sure what happened is I made a change to these maybe, or maybe I didn't, but this value maybe hadn't saved to disk yet, you know? And so when the game is pulling in the resource, it didn't have the 1 just yet. I can't think of any other explanation for that. So if you run into that bug, try just doing a Control S, make sure you save it, maybe even relaunch the project. And if neither of those things work, comment below, and hopefully we'll figure out a way to address it if you can't solve it on your own. But there we have it. We have totally game juiced out our dialogue system just by adding, right? We added the animations, we added audio, we added the text play animation, and we made it all of it dynamic based off of letters, random values for pitch and things like that. So I hope you guys have learned something new. Please continue to comment, give my videos a like if you are enjoying the content I'm giving you, and you know, if you want to see what's coming next, hit that subscribe button. All those things really help my channel grow, and I greatly appreciate all you who have been following along and leaving comments. I wish I had a little bit more time to respond to all of them, honestly, but you know, I'm a busy working guy and I've got a family, so sometimes I just don't have the time to answer every question. I do have a Discord community, and you can find the link on my YouTube channel, and I think it's in the description. If not, look for it. You can join that, and there's some really active members of that community who are also super helpful. So a huge shout out to all of you. And yeah, thanks for joining. And as always, we'll see you next time. Oh, finally a reason to use my boomerang. There we go. Be interesting if boomerangs could activate the dialogue system, and it would like make them say something mean. You can add that to your game. Free idea. Being able to throw boomerangs at NPCs. I guess hitting NPCs has been done before, right? I don't know. And some of you may have missed it. We fixed a little bug with the inventory. Check that video out, previous video. The boomerang is OP. I just haven't played through this for a while. Just got to remember what it does. Oh, stupid. I thought he was gonna die. Nice. Got a key. Where is the key gonna lead us anyways? I mean, like, is there gonna be a boss in here, or what's this all about? Ah, dang it. It's a freaking empty room.